Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Panels and Bars with your hosts, BB Manic and Patrick Allen. This week, for no reason at all, no reason at all. So, I was listening to a podcast. I can't remember what it's called, but I will find out and credit them in the bottom description. But essentially, they were complaining about where DC is at so far because of Flash bombing so hard. And they had some hesitations about what James Gunn is going to do going forward. And so one of the hosts just said, "Hey DC, do you remember Batman the Animated Series? Just do that. Make it live action. Just do that." And I remember I was watching it and agreeing completely, but then I thought, you know what? I haven't actually watched Batman the Animated Series in a long, long time. And you and I spoke about this the last time we had a conversation. So much of when we're at this age now, so much of our appreciation of certain things, I think, is steeped in nostalgia. And so it is hard to know, is this thing like, so one of my favorite series is Spider-Man animated series, and I do love it. But since going back and rewatching it, I'm like, yeah, it's kind of patchy. And I think nostalgia does a lot of the heavy lifting. So for me, I wanted to just pick two of, in my opinion, the best episodes and see if they still hold up. So we watched Almost Gotham, which is an episode where a roundtable full of uh, Batman's Rogues Gallery discussed times they very nearly caught him or got one up on him. And then the other is Heart of Ice, which is the introduction of it's pretty much now the canon version of Mr. Freeze. He's introduced, and they're both just fantastic. I almost nearly said we should watch Legends of the Dark Knight.
Your favorite episode?
It is my favorite episode, but I also left it way late to tell Patrick we were going to do this. We did it last night, so I didn't want to give him 3 episodes.
I got a text at like 7 o'clock, being all like, "Watch these 2 episodes of Batman the Animated Series," and I was all like, "Okay,
exactly.
Cool, whatever."
So we'll start with Almost Gotham. What did you think?
I mean, I really, really enjoyed that one. That one, it had a really nice framing device. I did have a mild issue with the fact that because of how narrative works, like the structure is, we're all telling the story of the time we came closest to defeating Batman. But what they were telling was the story of every time they fight Batman. Because obviously they never have a fight with Batman where Batman just kicks the shit out of them and then they lose, because that wouldn't be an interesting story. So all of the stories were structured like, so I was fighting Batman and then it looked like I had the upper hand, but he defeated me. Like, every time anyone fights Batman in any episodes, do you know what I mean? Like for instance, in Heart of Ice, Mr. Freeze also appears to have the upper hand, but then Batman defeats him at the last minute with a stroke of ingenuity, because that's what Batman
does.
Always does. Yeah. However, I really liked the twist with in the framing device, they were sat at the table and Killer Croc was there, and then it turned out it was just Batman, I guess.
Was he Batman the whole time? Did he swap him out?
Was he doing
he was so committed to it because he let Poison Ivy humiliate him, and he shows he's got a really good sense of humor, because if it was Batman the whole time, that I threw a rock at him was Batman.
Yeah, because they all tell their story, but Killer Croc's story is, one time I threw a big rock at him. It was really big, and that bit was really funny. I really enjoyed that.
It's really good.
I also think it kind of demonstrated the classic, like the James Bond style. Man, their plans are stupid.
Yeah.
Like, their plans are so dumb. Especially the Penguin's plan is to trap him in a place full of birds, and he's coated the hummingbirds' beaks with poison and sprayed Batman with like hummingbird
or something
attractor, and then all the hummingbirds are chasing him. And also in that one, Batman kills a lot of birds.
He does kill a lot of birds,
which seems kind of brutal. He like just picks.
I also feel like he makes birds kill other birds as well.
Yeah, like there's a lot of bird murder in that. But it's kind of like, one thing I did think about it was
he has no loyalty to them.
Outside of Joker's plan, obviously, all of them I was all like, guys, your plans are just fucking ludicrously complex. Like, why isn't the time you got closest to killing Batman that time that he was off guard and you shot him in the open face part of his mask? And then, like, I knocked 6 of his teeth out. I fully 50 cented him. He had to go and get a jaw reconstruction. Like, because all of them are like, I had a bunch of trick pumpkins. and it was just like what I would have appreciated more is some background on how they got there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, at what point did they, like, the Joker had an electric chair that runs on laughter.
I feel
Um,
like the Joker should be a millionaire. He's able to invent things like that. Stop trying to kill Batman and just market these weird things that you have.
yeah, but in general, it was like a really, really fun. The framing device was really fun, and the little stories were really
You know,
fun.
one
I
thing I like,
appreciated the structure.
and it does, this is also a story element which is shared by Legends of the Dark Knight. It taps into the fact that because he does his job so well, no one really has any idea of what Batman is. So at the beginning, Two-Face is like, it's obviously a team full of people. And it's funny
Yeah,
because it's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
almost the conversations that people have in real life about Banksy. You know, there's no way one man is doing all this and going undetected. He's got people on the inside. It's a team of people. They've got, you know, shortcuts they use. And it's the same things. Like, obviously, it seems very funny in the context of this show to talk about what the real world implications would be or the real world opinions. But yeah, you would kind of be thinking, there's no way there's one guy stopping this crime wave. There's no way this guy's been shot at and frozen and stabbed and punched and he's still
Yeah,
going. It has
yeah,
to
yeah,
be
yeah.
multiple people. So I did love the fact that even the villains who have been face to face with him, some of them are going, there's no way. There's no way I keep fighting the same guy. It's like it's a team. Someone's got them a retainer and they're like a SWAT team of Batman.
Yeah. And the other thing that I noticed, which I think is definitely, like you were saying about the nostalgia, is that, like, the animation is ropier than I remember it being.
Yeah.
Like, when I watched them, I watched Heart of Ice first because that was the order that they released it in. And the
That's probably
intro
the better way to
sequence,
watch it because I feel like almost Gotham's a bit of a palate cleanser. I watched it the other
yeah,
way around and I was super happy. It's like, oh no, I'm sad.
yeah. The intro sequence though is gorgeous.
Yeah.
Like, it's so beautiful. It's such spectacular animation. And there was a level at which then the actual thing started, and I was all like, "Ugh,
Yeah.
grim! Like, what is
There's
wrong
also
with your
like weird
face?"
moments where I feel like maybe they have mandates from the network on how long the episode should be. So there's certain moments where either nothing is really happening or they're stretching something out. So for instance,
Yeah,
when the Joker tells his story, the initial applause that, you know, obviously they're being held at gunpoint, but it's really long and awkward and it
yeah,
feels more like, oh, we have to put 2 more minutes on this. Just
yeah, yeah,
start
yeah, yeah.
clapping.
We need 10. We need to find 10 seconds somewhere.
Yeah.
Um, I did also like the twist where Catwoman at the end is trying to bang him, and then he leaves, and she's all like, "Ah, almost
Almost
got
got
him."
it.
And it's like, I thought that, like, like, writing wise, it was really good. Also, is that the first appearance of Harley Quinn?
I
Uh,
think so, and it's because it's Arlene Sorkin doing the voice rather than Tara Strong. And I think most people won't notice the difference, but I really think Tara Strong is the better Harley Quinn voice actress. She
because
voiced her in
it's
the video games, and she voiced her for the second half of the animated series.
and it's series one, and I know that she's her original. I know she comes from Batman the animated series, so I
Yeah,
obviously not watching the previous. I think it's like episode 35 of season one. So not having watched the previous 34, Harley might already have appeared in one of them. But I was a bit like, oh, okay, is this like the first time Harley ever appeared? Because
yeah,
that's kind of fun. She's less over the top than modern interpretations of
yeah,
Harley.
100%. Yeah,
But I like her in the
It's the
animated series
Deadpool
more.
effect, isn't it? Because
Yeah,
the majority of the sales and merchandise and stuff is coming from people who are outside of the canon, and when they're outside of the canon and the fan base, they only react to certain stereotypes or certain elements of the character. So then rather than trying to push stories that would maybe flesh those characters out, the companies just go, we'll just exaggerate all the things that you like. So now
yeah,
Deadpool, who did have some layers and some depth to him at some point, is just Ryan Reynolds full of catchphrases. And I
yeah.
get it, but like you said, it's a shame with Harley Quinn because there's so much you could do with that character. But she's
I missed
just
that
like,
run
I
of
miss my
Deadpool.
pudding.
I missed that run of Deadpool where he had the two voices of himself inside his head. That was really
Yeah,
good, and it was
that was
like
really good.
there was like narration, and he could hear the narration, and then he would
Mm-hmm.
talk to the narrator, and then later on there was a second disembodied Deadpool voice in his head, and they would be arguing while Deadpool was trying to do things, and then he'd be yelling at them, and obviously nobody else could hear, so people in the scenes would be being all like, "Who are you
What's
Who are you
happening?
shouting at? Who are you talking to?"
Did you ever
Um,
see the one where he met his dad? So he was
Maybe I've read a
cursed
lot of
by,
comics.
I don't know if you know, but he used to be married to death.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
because he did it to piss Thanos off, right?
yeah, exactly. And so he gets cursed at some point probably because he's pissed her off for the millionth time. And the curse is if he ever meets his father, he'd look handsome again. And so he has this really nice conversation with this guy in a bar, like the first time in a long time he's relaxed and really gotten on with someone. And the guy leaves, and Deadpool's like, "Oh man, I should have got his number or something. That would have been cool." He takes his mask off and he looks in the mirror and he looks just like Brad Pitt. And he's like, "That's terrible. I'll never see my father again." So he's just sat in this bar looking like Brad Pitt, super depressed.
Oh man, that's so upsetting. Yeah, like I think that Cable Deadpool is my favorite Deadpool run, but like I think that one of the things I've been thinking recently is that like I read Welcome Back Frank because I watched season 2 of Daredevil and I was all like, man, the Punisher's awesome. And then I was all like, that is the best Punisher graphic novel. So I read it again, and then I was all like, I should read some more comics. And I spent like 30 seconds on Wikipedia, and I was all like, nah, I'm good. Like, it's
Yeah.
because it's always just like, yeah, I mean, so you can read these 60 issues of Punisher, but you'll need to track all of them down. They're in these 16 graphic novels, or you can download them all in this one file. But like, it's just such a fucking mess.
I was
trying
I
to
was on
read
Twitter the other day and I
Marvel.
follow Marvel, and I don't know why I follow Marvel because it makes me angry. But there's some current campaign or event called The End of X, I think. And so
Sure.
once again, it's another year-long X title where you have to read 7 titles to understand, and the status quo will completely change until it reverts back to what it was 2 years ago. So it's just like I don't understand how they're not learning.
I think it's wild that when we worked together at Forbidden Planet, when we worked at the comic book shop and I had access to all the comics, I used to fucking love those things where it was all like,
Yeah.
This Batman story is running across 8 Batman titles. Because I was always all like, awesome, yeah, I'll just grab them, and I might not buy them all, but I'll read them
But
all.
see,
And
it's funny you mentioned Batman because DC is doing they're doing that really well now, and I really applaud them. If someone came to me today and was like, how do I start with Batman?" I'm like, every now and then they do Batman Black and White, and that's just a bunch of short stories, and that's great. Batman International graphic novel, go read that. That's complete. You don't need to read anything else. There's I think there's about 6 core Batman titles at the moment, and I don't think any of them share the same cast. They're all kind of about different things, and some are like supernatural and weird, and some are just straight up detective stories. And it's like that's how it should be. I shouldn't have to spend £50 a month to have one chapter of a story that you're planning to do for the next 12 months. It's ridiculous.
I mean, I would say you could just buy those Grant Morrison omnibus editions. They're quite expensive.
Yeah.
I think they're
But
like
then Grant Morrison is a fantastic actor, a
they're
fantastic
like
writer.
are they like 60 quid each? The omnibuses? I don't know, but they're big
If you
hardcover
if you
books.
if you hunt on eBay, every now and then someone who doesn't realize what they're giving up puts them on there for pretty affordable
I mean, he
prices.
might not be a fantastic writer, but Batman
They,
RIP into Batman and Robin is one of the best comic book runs I've ever read in
yeah.
my life. Like, especially Batman and Robin with Damian and Dick together as Batman and
I
Robin
think
is
that's one of the only times I've actually
so
liked
good.
Damien because Damien annoys me as a character.
Yeah, I mean, I like his introduction in Batman RIP, and I like him in Batman and Robin. I've not read any Batman. I don't think I've read any newer Batman than that, so I have no kind of
Cool.
like
You're lucky.
general feel on him. But yeah, like
A lot of people write him the same way that Frank Miller wrote Robin in All Star Batman and Robin.
oh, well,
Yeah,
that's bad. I fucking hate
exactly.
Frank Miller.
Do you know it's so weird because I don't know if you've been keeping up, but he has really seemed to have gotten. I'm not gonna say his mojo. He thinks he's gotten his mojo back, so he is doing a lot of things recently, but they're not very good at all, even a
are
little
they
bit.
are they fashy? Because he's real.
He
He's
stopped
real
doing that stuff,
fashy.
and it's not because he is trying to be a good person. It's because I think he's just tired of the woke mafia trying to silence him. So he's been less overtly fashy. It's more just that he's got back into drawing, and his art is terrible now. Like you
Yeah,
look at it, you can't believe this is the same person that did Sin City. It's
I
really
can't
bad.
believe I spent all those years thinking that Frank Miller was like a really clever writer who was writing intelligent parodies of right wing thinking. And then it turns out that, nah,
That's how
that's
he
just
thinks.
what Frank Miller believes.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, no, that's awful.
Well, it's really
Um,
weird because he went from you look at something like The Dark Knight, where Superman is this oppressive tool of the government, and Batman stands for the everyday person. You're like, oh wow, okay, this is an incredible take on it. And he somehow just fully switched around,
Yeah,
and he's writing books about 9/11 and how brown people are bad, and just
yeah.
oh yeah, please
He wrote that
stop.
story about Batman fighting Al Qaeda, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well,
Which
he wrote
DC
one,
wouldn't publish
so
because they
Image
were
just
like,
published it under a different title. Yeah,
yeah, oh, grim.
yeah.
And
And so now
obviously
he's
the other,
drawing, and it just looks like really bad.
but yeah,
Marvel's had him doing a bunch of covers, and it's just like, what happened? Like, if you look at someone like Alex Ross, who has been in the game for like 30 plus years and is getting better, Bill Sienkiewicz, who I want to say Bill Sienkiewicz might be in his early 60s, is absolutely crushing it. Like Joe Quesada, who was the editor back when you and I were like in college, still killing it. Like, there are so many people. Like Jim Lee somehow. I don't know if
yeah,
he's like drinking the
Jim
blood of
Lee's
younger artists or
incredible.
something, but he's amazing. I don't know if you
Yeah, I
saw it recently
follow.
a picture of Batman and Superman versus King Kong and Godzilla.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
He's so good.
Yeah,
He
and
is so good.
I follow Frank Cho on Instagram, and he
Mm.
mainly does covers now. And Frank Cho is just getting better. Like as he, I often think it's really sad. I wonder how good would Michael Turner be now? Do you know what I mean?
Oh
Like
man, yeah,
how, because he
yeah.
was already just
He was insane.
unbelievable with a pencil. But
Rest in
yeah, I
peace,
mean,
Michael Turner.
yeah, it's really sad. It makes me sad every time I get out my fucking Batman Superman graphic novels, and I'm like,
It's
oh
weird
my
because you and I, when we were really into it, there was a real age where not even Image Central, but the Image imprints looked like they were really going to dominate the game.
yeah,
You had, Cliffhanger, Top Cow, and then unfortunately they all proved Marvel right because none of them could stick to a friggin' deadline.
yeah,
And
yeah,
like eventually a lot of them just got bored and left the comics industry without finishing any of their titles. And it's like you say, like it's like, aside from Turner, the guys who were, still around, if they'd have just had that discipline, imagine where they could be. But J. Scott Campbell does 2 covers a year now, and I don't
yeah.
think the last time I remember when Adam Warren dropped something. So all these amazing people just
Well, and also the ones of them who Marvel and DC hired back, like Marvel hired back Joe Madureira, and we're all like, yeah, I mean, this guy's so good, we've got to give him another chance. And then they let him draw Ultimates 3, I
yeah.
think. And it was like it took like 5 years to get out 6 issues or
Well, I don't know if
whatever.
you've seen, but they've released the 11th issue of Battle Chasers this year.
How long
For
has Battle
for
Chasers
everyone
been
that
running?
doesn't know, the 10th issue came out a decade ago.
Yeah,
And the
it's
funny thing
just
is,
like,
you'd think, okay, well, he's had 10 years, he'll finish it, right? Nope, he's just writing it. He's still not penciling it because he can't trust himself to hit deadlines
I mean, also he's just playing video games all the time.
and making a lot of money from video
Like if
games
you
as well.
follow him
So
on social media, he's just like, "Yeah, man, Zelda's awesome." It's just like I'm not doing
yeah.
any work. Why would
Well,
I? I'm
I saw some
rich.
documentary about I don't know if it's Ubisoft or one of these companies. He's like a visual developer for one of those companies, and someone said, I think it was like what he got paid every 5 years from DC. He gets paid like per project by Ubisoft,
Yeah.
and it's the type of
I don't
sketches
think
he would
it's
do for free
Ubisoft.
anyway.
I can't remember who it is, but yeah, yeah, yeah. I know. I
It's
know.
one of those companies, yeah, that has more money than sense, and they're just like, hey, do you want to design cool stuff? And then he was saying a lot of the time he designs it, and they're like, yeah, no, that's too complicated. We can't do that. Like engines aren't at that point yet. But here's your money. So they pay him for stuff that they'll
Yeah,
never use because it looks cool.
yeah. Like, well, or I mean, the games industry is full of scenarios where people are all like, "Hey, let's do this," and then they get halfway through doing it, and then the companies are like, "Yeah, no, we've changed our mind. Sorry, you
Yeah.
can have your cash, and we're just going to abandon this because."
Do you ever watch
And so
what happened?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Watch what
Yeah, like it's
happened.
great, but it's very depressing.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's just decades and decades of the world's biggest companies making the same mistake over and over. And what's scary is when it's the same companies. Like he's covered Capcom so many times.
yeah, yeah. In fairness, Capcom are on a real hot streak at the moment, so that's
Yeah,
nice. Capcom have been really hitting it out of the park over the last couple of years. Like Capcom are in this place again now, where when I see that they've announced the game, I'm all like, "Oh, it's a Capcom game. Maybe it'll be good." Which it has. They haven't been there for years, but yeah, like now,
yeah.
whenever I see a trailer and it starts with Capcom, I'm all like, "Okay, let's
You know
go,"
the thing is,
because
if a company wants to just sink into, hey, remember those games you loved? Remember how the only thing that sucked about them was that the graphics weren't there yet, but they are now. Why don't we just remake it? I am 100% happy for companies to do that because, as you know,
I
my
think
favorite game of all time is Def Jam Fight for New York, but it looks terrible now.
I
And the
think
sad thing
that
is, they'll never be able to remake it because the licenses it has so
no,
many
they'll never. No,
people's
yeah,
real
that's never
likenesses.
coming back.
It's never coming back. But if someone could, oh my gosh,
Did you
take
see
my
the
money
story
now.
about Activision's Transformers games? So
No,
there were these two Transformers games, War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron, on the PS3 360, and Hasbro are releasing some really gorgeous figures of the versions of the Transformers from those games, and they're like really solid third-person shooters where you can transform into a car, exactly what you'd want from a Transformers game.
yeah,
And somebody asked the Hasbro rep at a toy fair, any chance the game's getting re-released? And he was like, "Yeah, Activision don't know where the source code is." So
no,
like we've asked them if they can re-release them, and the guy from Activision was basically all like, sounds like a lot of looking, can't be arsed. So when they made the figures, they had to buy copies of the games and boot
just
them
so
up
oh
so that they could look at the
wow,
characters, because they didn't have access to the models or any of the original assets,
hmm.
because Activision makes so much money from Call of Duty skins that the
They just don't
idea
care.
of the idea of rooting through a desk to try and find an old hard drive with the source code on for Transformers games so that they can sell it for a bit of money is just like, why bother to them?
Yeah,
But like the industry is just full of like, there's a book by Jason Schreier, like he made this really interesting book about video games where it was kind of like about successful development that was pulled out the bag, and then the sequel to it is like games that fell apart and failed, and it is so depressing, especially because like multiple of them are Warren Spector games.
yeah,
So he made like Deus Ex, and he's got this high history of making games. He's like I don't know who the equivalent would be, but all industries have like a guy who everybody in this industry loves their stuff, but
yeah.
they never really make any money.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
so
it's
like
to this day, when you look at Deus Ex, it's still incredible what it got made in the first place
yeah,
because
it
it's so
is.
intelligent. It has so many incredible mechanics. I can't imagine trying to pitch it to a boardroom full of executives and
No,
having them
well,
go,
but he
"Yeah, take our
didn't.
money." Like, I just don't.
He didn't have to, because it was funded primarily by John Romero, who did Doom. Because
Mm.
John Romero had like this blank check and was all like, "I'm going to make crazy games," and then he hired Warren Spector and was all like, "Make whatever you want. I'll hire you a giant office and I'll give you millions of dollars." And they'd go to meetings, and John Romero and Warren Spector would be like ready with his like binder of, "Here's what we've done," and John Romero would be all like, "What are the vibes like, man?" Because he's just not a business person.
Yeah,
But yeah, like Warren Spector also made Epic Mickey. I don't know if you played that.
I
It's a
do.
Wii
Epic
game.
Mickey's fantastic.
It's a fantastic game. It's so good, and like it's got this reputation in the industry and amongst fans for being like this flop. But then you talk to people about it, and no one's ever played it.
Yeah.
And it is so good. It's one of the best games I've
To
ever
be fair, the only
played
reason
in my
I knew it
life.
existed is I worked in Virgin Megastore at the time. And this was back when you used to have game reps, and game reps would try and get you to up the number in your orders. And I was like, a Disney game? No, thank you. And they were like, take a copy and play it, see how you feel. And I came back and I was like, I will have 100 copies, please,
Yeah,
which my manager
absolutely.
wasn't happy about, but it's a great game.
It's a great game. I played it primarily because I was all like, well, I'm not super jazzed about the general concept, but I don't know, it's Warren Spector, so it'll probably be great. And it is so good. And nobody's ever played it. And when you mention it, people are all like, yeah, that game that flopped. And it's just like, guys, you should, like, everybody should get a copy of that game. Everybody should
Yeah.
buy a Wii and get a copy of that game, because
Yeah.
it's fucking incredible.
It's great. I wonder if it's on
We've
Steam.
gotten real far off topic. At least we're not
We
talking about
have.
the Matrix.
Give it time, my friend. Give it time.
Welcome to the Matrix podcast, where we talk about other things, but somehow wind our way
Always
around
end up back in the Matrix.
to the Matrix.
Okay,
So yeah, the other
Heart
episode
of
that we watched
Ice.
was Heart of Ice. Yeah,
Yes.
that one was fucking incredible. Like,
Incredible.
it's an absolute masterclass in how to tell a story in 20 minutes.
Yes.
It's unbelievable how well structured and nuanced it is, and like Mr. Freeze is creepy as shit in that
Really is.
episode.
Do you know much about the original Mr. Freeze?
No, I don't think I've not read a lot of Golden Age DC.
Well, it's funny because I was about to say you're not missing much. When it's bad, you're not missing much. When it's good, it's like Batman has 7 pink suits because one of them refracts light and the other helps mushrooms grow. It's one of those weird things.
Yeah.
Obviously,
I'm familiar with Golden Age Superman and his super weaving, and
Yes.
landscaping powers and stuff.
And kissing people to forget who you are and making Lois black and all types of weird powers he has.
And
But
his super ventriloquism, obviously my
yes,
favorite power. He can make his voice sound like anyone's voice and sound like it's coming from
from
anywhere.
anywhere. But yeah,
Obviously.
so Mr. Freeze was he was from the camp side of that, and it was literally just a guy with the freeze gun that didn't really give Batman that much trouble, and he was just your villain of the week. So to see that and go, we're going to create this really dark, almost sympathetic character. Man, and for me, one of the things that really sells it, the voice acting in this episode is
It's
some
so
of the
good.
best. It's
It's
good.
also like, I think it's really interesting that in a lot of the later interpretations of Mr. Freeze, which people are more familiar with, he's got his wife in a jar and he's all, my wife got frozen because she was ill and now she's in a jar and I'm sad about that. Whereas in this episode, she's just dead. Like he had her in a jar, but the evil CEO of the corporation he worked for just came in one day and was all like, nah, funding's up, pull the plug. And he was all like, but my wife will die. And the CEO was all like, fuck you,
Yeah,
profits.
exactly. Yeah.
In fairness, that guy who was all like, we're the family company, we're the friendly family company, and then he was talking to Bruce Wayne, another rich guy behind closed doors, and was all like,
I love
yeah,
that.
those wage slaves are always trying to get their fucking get out. They don't know their place.
They want equity and they want to live like a real person.
And it was so like, again, so like tightly written. Like when I saw the first bit where he was being all like, with a family company, I don't know why anybody would slander us like this. I was all like, well, this guy's evil, isn't he?
Yeah.
But how swiftly they gave us that sequence with Bruce Wayne where it just like laid it out and it didn't feel unnatural. It didn't feel like contrived. It felt
it feels
like
you just someone letting their guard down because you get it. I can talk to you. This is
yeah,
how real life
you're a
is.
rich white guy like me, so mask off. And that was
honestly,
just
I mean,
so good.
we cannot praise Kevin Conroy enough. He was just so phenomenal. And in I love it's the subtleties in that performance. Because first of all, it's been said 1,000 times, it's a cliche at this point. The mask is Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne is the act. So he has to be charming. But the little inflections and the way he changes the tone in his voice to go from Batman to Bruce Wayne, like it's really well done. And in this, that scene is fantastic because he's trying to keep that veneer up, but he also has so much contempt for this man.
Yeah, and
it's fantastic.
I've got a lot of time for any episode of TAS with Bruce Wayne in. I don't think there's enough Bruce Wayne in it in general, but like it's so, and I love.
But I mean, I think in its way, that's one of the things it nails because he doesn't like being Bruce. It's a waste of time. Every time he's at a party or something, it's time he could be spending punching a criminal in the face. And in this episode, he only goes because it's probably an easier way to get the information out of that guy as being Bruce than it would be to interrogate him as Batman. So, yeah, I think you're right. In terms of performance, it is a shame we don't get nearly as much Kevin Conroy as Bruce Wayne as we should, but it's very true to the character. I mean, one of my favorite Batman moments ever is, I forget the villain's name, but in Batman Beyond, there's a villain who can project thoughts into your head that have your voice.
Yeah. I can't remember his name either.
I can't remember. He's a fantastic villain. And he nearly drives Bruce crazy, but he doesn't. And at the end, Terry says, how did you know that you weren't going crazy? And Bruce said, well, first of all, I'm not crazy. And second of all, he called me Bruce. And in my head, that's not what I call myself. And it's like, it's so
neat. Yeah. And it's like, I also love the note of Batman getting a cold when he gets frozen. And then he's all like sneezy. And Alfred's all like, hey dude, maybe chill out a little bit on the being Batman. And he's all like, I don't care, Alfred. And he's just like sneezing. Yeah, and it's just like, but I really, really love that, like, it tells you a lot about his character in terms of the fact that he is deep down just human, but also the fact that he just is completely unwilling to accept that fact. Like it was so neat. I love that when the henchmen leave behind one of the other henchmen and his legs are frozen, Batman stops and goes and rescues him. Like,
because he easily could have caught up to them, but he was like, no, that's not the right thing to do.
Yeah, and like those little notes.
Question about the henchmen. What is their motivation? When you get with the Joker, his team are obviously as crazy as he is. Harley's team, she always gives them a cut to the profit. Like, Freeze doesn't seem to be paying them, and he's horrible to them.
Yeah.
What is their incentive to do these capers?
Yeah, I think that a lot about like I've been watching the Netflix Marvel shows, and they keep on having moments where someone will be all like, "I'm putting out a bounty on this guy. It's 10 grand," and to then they'll go to they'll somebody will rat the guy out, and then they'll just like shoot him. And I was all like, surely after you've done that once, maybe twice, no one's going to come to you anymore because
Yeah.
they'll know that there's no point in actually going to you. You'll go, if you snitch on this guy, we'll give you this money. And they'll be like, I know, but the last 3 guys who snitched on him just got shot. So at that point, why would anybody ever consider that? And I think
it's one thing that I really like about The Dark Knight, which is with the opening where the Joker has told all of them to kill each other. And I like that the last guy is like, I bet the Joker told you to kill me, right? You know, because it's like, thank you. At least one of them thought of it. It's kind of insane they all get taken out, but yeah.
Yeah, and like it's similar to I know that it's the Marvel trope that they've used. They use it in Iron Man 3, but it's also in Daredevil where they beat up all of the guys, and then the last one is all like, "I don't like doing this. Please let me go." But I like that vibe, like because they shouldn't really have any direct motivation for it. I do think though that the animated series gets away with it more because of the Depression era setting. Because it's set in a world where clearly the economy is collapsing. I think now in our modern world, with the insane split between rich and poor and the impossibility of just living your life and paying your rent, I think now in today's world in 2023, if some dude turned up with an ice gun and was all like, "Hey, I'll pay you like 10 grand if you come with
I
me
understand that,
to do ice crime."
I understand that, but like, I don't think they ever established if he is paying them. That's my question. Because it's not like they're robbing any banks. They're robbing all the whatever this cryogenics companies is. Like they're robbing all their facilities. So I don't, and I never see him pay them. It just seems to be like, you there, if you're not doing anything, come rob these scientific facilities with me.
You're my goon now.
Exactly.
I do, yeah. I mean, I think that probably what we're straying into here is the thing that we always kind of get a little bit around, which is it's a children's cartoon.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
like,
I think
it's not...
funny. We were just talking about Grant Morrison. One of their best quotes they ever said was, if you show fiction to a child, they don't question how a fish can talk. They just enjoy it. But you show fiction to an adult and they start saying, well, who changes the tires on the Batmobile? No one changes the tires on the Batmobile. It's a cartoon. Shut up.
Yeah, who cares? It's like literally who gives a shit. I mean, it's the classic. I don't know if I told you last, I did, but like I saw that interview with Tolkien. Have you seen? So like this guy's like a Tolkien scholar.
Yeah.
Somebody says to him, "Okay, so based on the maps of Middle Earth we have, if they'd taken a boat instead of going across all the places they did, it would have taken only 10% longer, but been substantially safer." So why didn't Frodo and Sam go to Mordor?
Well, I mean, why didn't they just ride the giant bird? Like, because it's a less interesting story.
Didn't ride the giant bird is easy because there's a giant burning eye in the sky that would probably notice big birds, right? Like, I think that one's pretty reasonable. But like, it's kind of like it takes them 90% of the way through the journey to the same place, but up an inlet and a river that would avoid it. And the guy who was talking about it was all like, I've actually got an interview with J.R.R. Tolkien on the radio in like the 40s or whatever, where somebody asks him this question. And he plays the clip, and Tolkien goes, "Yes, I've been asked that question before, and I'll tell you what I told them. Shut up." And then the clip just ends. And it's like, yeah, it's like that. It's like that time that Ben Affleck said to Michael Bay, "Hey, why would you train oil drillers to be astronauts when it's easier to drill astronauts?" And Ben Affleck's all like, and I remember he turned to me and said, "Fuck off, Ben." Because at the end of the day, the answer is it's a better story that way. Like, Mr. Freeze doesn't work if he doesn't have any goons. So we don't need to know how he hires his goons.
Is true.
I assume he pays them. Like,
that's the thing. It's funny because they actually addressed that in Batman and Robin, which is that to power his frozen suit, he needs diamonds. So he keeps as many diamonds as he needs to power the suit, and then just gives the rest to the goons. It's like, that's fair enough.
He's got a lot of diamonds. He's a guy with he's a diamond collecting boy. Sure, whatever. Like maybe yeah. But Heart of Ice was unbelievably well written for an episode.
So that last line, Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
When he
like
just like he just feels he's let her down and he's so depressed. And like what it's another, and this Paul Dini and Bruce Timm, they just understand Batman so well. But that last scene of Batman watching him and he's not judging him, he's empathizing with him.
yeah.
Oh man, it's so good.
It's so good, and the fact that he also screws over the CEO while he's there, he like defeats Mister Freeze, and then is
He
all like,
does,
"Don't
but then
think you got away with this, rich guy."
he just gives the evidence to some random lady. Just give it
No,
to Gordon.
she's the news reporter from the beginning.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you. I'm
Because
glad
it's
to know
more
this.
important if he gives it to the police, rich guy might find some way to get around it legally.
Ah,
So it's
okay,
more important for him to give it to the reporter so that she can discredit him
cover it.
publicly. It's yeah,
Fantastic. Okay,
it's perfect.
it is perfect. Yeah.
And then obviously Alfred's chicken soup comes around and is the way he defeats Mr. Freeze because chicken soup is good for getting over a
Can
cold.
I just say, in these
It's
two episodes, Batman has a great sense of humor. At one
yeah.
point, before nearly killing Two Face, he's like, "I owe you $1."
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
so
it's just
good.
it's like here you go. Yeah, and him pretending to
Also,
be
in
Killer
that episode, we got
Croc
the
and
origin of the giant coin in the Batcave.
yeah, yeah. Just a little side note there, where he was bitterly like they let him keep the giant coin, and it's just like yeah, so they're so neatly written. Like I do think because I've also gone back and rewatched Spider-Man, 90s Spider-Man cartoon, and that is kind of terrible.
Mm,
Um, but this really does hold up.
it holds
It
up. Yeah.
really, yeah. I was really blown away by how intensely
It's why I understand that original podcast of setting up, because everyone's going to have different opinions on what makes the perfect Batman, what works and what doesn't, what should be kept and what should be left behind in the past. But for me, every element that I like of the character is balanced perfectly in this. It's pretty much never daytime, because I find it. I was saying this one on my other podcast. One of the things I enjoyed the Flash, but one of the things that took that not it didn't take me out of the Flash. But one thing I didn't enjoy, I don't like seeing Batman in the daytime. It's weird. Batman when the sun is up is just very weird to me,
just
right?
rolling on down the street in his bike.
Yeah, and I just
Um,
think that in this series, it's hardly ever daytime. If it is, it's because Bruce has to go and do some, retcon, some
yeah, I mean,
before
and I
the
think you
stuff.
stray then into the problem. One of the things that I had with the Batman with Robert Pattinson was that like they've made a lot of the costume stuff, like Penguin and Riddler and stuff, look plausible and realistic in that. Even
Yeah,
Catwoman kind of does.
yeah.
And there's a level at which you can't do that to Batman because he
Hmm.
still has to look like Batman. But then the problem is that in the Batman, he looks stupid
Yeah,
because
because everyone
everybody
else
else
is
is
fairly
wearing like
grounded, and he looks like a
realistic
giant
clothes
bat.
and he's wearing a silly bat out.
It's
And
it's a it's a
they've made
problem
it
that I
like a bit
have with
leather.
all modern comic adaptations at the moment, which is that you want to adapt these ridiculous stories, but then you also want to have your cake and eat it and say, aren't these things ridiculous? Yes, they
Yeah.
are. Stop poking fun at them. Stop shying away from that. If if we weren't comfortable with the idea of a 6 foot man dressed as a bat, we wouldn't watch the film.
Well, and also
So
where the
let us just
Batman
watch it.
works is that like Robert Pattinson plays Bruce as fucking unhinged.
Yeah,
So like I'm happy to accept that Bruce is the kind of person in that world who would dress like that because he's insane.
yeah.
And so that's fine. Like that
What I
works
quite
really
like about
well.
Batman, and I think a lot of comics have kind of tackled this, but I think Batman is the one that really feeds into it, is you get the sense that Gotham, yeah, it's already a dark and dingy and depressing place and it's falling apart, but you get the sense that a lot of his rogues gallery are a result of him. There's a weird butterfly effect. And so I like how weird Gotham is. And I think it's a shame to have such amazing actors and just have Colin Farrell play a mobster. Like, I would have loved to see him go all in and have the monocle and the weird big jacket and a bunch of
Yeah.
penguins with him, because it's this weird thing that, as much as Batman is trying to stop these things happening, he's maybe the cause of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's a lot of space for if you don't want to go all in on the Penguin. Like you don't need to have him in it as much. One thing I went to see Oppenheimer the night before last, and one thing that
Any
I
good?
really thought was
Actually, no, don't talk about it yet. We'll talk about it in
yeah, we'll do that in a bit.
what's really good.
But one thing I thought is that it's full of really famous, really good actors who appear in like one or two scenes. They are just like it's a bit part, but Nolan's gotten somebody unbelievably talented to play that bit part.
Yeah.
And it makes all of them have more impact. Like you could have Colin Farrell as the Penguin, and you could do a bit more of, you could give him a little bit more penguin face,
Yeah.
and then you could just have him in it a bit less if you're
Hmm.
worried about it costing a lot or looking stupid.
Yeah.
In fact, you could just have him. You could have him mostly in shadow. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot
Yeah.
you can do there, but they feel the need to constantly go, okay, we've got the penguin in this, so he's going to have to be there. And he's got no, like, one thing I really appreciated in Batman the Animated Series as well is that all of the villains have like their thing, and it's represented not just in who they are but in their dialogue. So the penguin uses a lot of big long words because
Yeah.
he's intellectual, and the other villains poke fun at him because they don't understand what he's saying. But like that little note, and similarly Poison Ivy describes everything in plant terms,
Yeah.
and like, and obviously the Joker is just fucking wild. He sounds like he's on a late night talk show all the time.
Yeah.
And those subtle differences that bleed over into the dialogue are something that I think modern superhero stuff really misses. Like,
Yeah.
I know that we're not allowed to like Batman and Robin starring George Clooney, and
It has some good things in it.
I know that Schwarzenegger goes too
You're
far.
not sending me to the cooler.
Yes, but I do
Nice to
think that
meet you.
maybe the
I'm sorry.
response to that was for everybody to be like, we can't have themed villain
Yeah.
dialogue anymore because it's cheesy.
Yeah.
But I just kind of think you just need to do, and these episodes of Batman the Animated Series show that like you can do, like, you could listen to Poison Ivy's dialogue and
And
you
notice
could
her
not
straight away.
pick up. Yeah, you could notice her straight away, but you could also listen to it and take a pass at it, and you wouldn't be all like, she's plant lady. But if
Yeah.
you listen carefully, the descriptions, the language she uses is just slightly more plant-based than most
Yeah.
people's would.
Yeah.
And that subtle use of dialogue, of like customized dialogue, gives them all their own personality. Like
Yeah.
the subtle changes in Two-Face's voice as he's flipping between his two different
Yes.
personalities, the subtle changes in Bruce's voice, like they're not
Do you remember the
punchy.
episode when he becomes Two-Face?
Yeah, I love that episode.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And there's
And
when the initial transformation is happening and he keeps with his partner, he keeps jumping back and forth between wanting to be the good side and wanting to be the bad side. Oh man, what a cast.
we've never seen a version of Two-Face on screen in live action.
No.
What
It's
we
very
always
funny
get
because
is,
I was thinking about it yesterday because I'm guessing you anyone who's listened to this probably knows the very famous story of Tommy Lee Jones telling Jim Carrey to his face that he hates him.
yeah.
And whilst it's hilarious, the reason he said he hates him is because of his buffoonery. Yet he spent that whole movie trying to one up him. It was just a
Yeah,
bizarre choice to me.
And it's like, but his, like, him, he is just one face. He is just bad. He's just the bad side, and there's
that's the
no
thing,
other
an
side
actor as
to
talented
Harvey.
as Tommy Lee Jones, especially if you think he's trying to make that point, wouldn't it have made a lot more sense to have really tapped into the duality of that character and
Yeah, because he
have
could
a soft,
be.
tender side and a really dark side? It's just, but like
I've
he's just
seen
crazy all the time.
I've seen Tommy Lee Jones playing softer, older, like, and you could even from his Hollywood performances, you could have him be half guy from Men in Black, whose letter I can't remember, and
He's
half
K.
angry drill sergeant from Captain America, and
Yeah.
even that combination would be enough to give Two-Face two sides, which is
Yeah.
the whole fucking point of him. It's in his
Yeah.
name. And it's like, even Aaron Eckhart's version of The Dark Knight is very much like, I'm a good guy and now I'm a bad guy and half my face is burned. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's not the point. The point
Yeah.
is that he has two faces.
And what I love about Aaron Eckhart's is that he's like, okay, the coin decides, but then even when the coin decides something he doesn't like, he's like, I'm still gonna find a way to kill you. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna shoot you in the head, but I will make you crash this car. Like, you
Yeah.
killed him.
And like, I did really enjoy in that episode with in Almost Got Him that Two-Face was like, right, I'm gonna flip the coin, and on one side you die, and on the other side you just get really badly hurt. So it's like he hates him so much that even the good half of him is being kind of pulled into a bad place.
Yeah.
But there's still a duality there. There's still there's still a side of him that has no qualms about crushing somebody to death, and a side of him that does. And that even that is like, I think that, you know what you're saying about Kevin Conroy's performance, I think that one person I would love to watch Batman the animated series is whoever's playing Superman in Superman Legacy. I can't remember what that guy's name is. I don't know him from anything.
Yeah.
The guy they've cast as Superman.
Everyone I've seen, I don't know him either, but everyone has said that he's been fantastic whatever he's been in so far, and everyone's really excited to see him play this role. So
Old bland white man. In fairness, though, the casting rumors were him, another guy I've never heard of, and fucking Nicholas Hoult. So
but the funny thing is, I don't know if you know this, it seems that recently for every comic book movie, Nicholas Hoult is always in the shortlist.
I'm good with Nicholas Hoult, not
and
me.
he always auditions. So I remember starting to feel a bit sorry for him, but some people think that Gunn really likes him, and if it lines up and he wants to do it, Gunn's probably going to make him Luthor.
I mean, I liked him as Beast. It's not like I don't like Nicholas Hoult. I really liked him in The Menu. I thought he was fucking excellent. He's
fantastic in that.
Like,
I think you could make a good Luthor.
Yeah, I just don't see him as. I don't. You know, you don't want to say this because it shouldn't be a big deal. But I mean, his face is too weird.
I mean, you could go down the Tim Burton route. You know, that's why he hired Nicolas Cage, because it's like he's an alien. Maybe he should kind of look weird.
No, I don't want that. Like Superman should be not. And the thing is that like it's not like Superman should be hot. Bruce Wayne should be handsome. Do you know what I mean? Like Bruce Wayne should be attractive.
Val Kilmer's the perfect Bruce Wayne.
Superman should be kind of bland. He should look like he could be any guy, and that's not Nicholas.
We're totally once again veering off track, but this is what you listen for. Did you ever read any Martian Manhunter comic books, like any of his solo?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
So one element of his, and I discussed this a while back, one element of his I've always really liked that they've never explored in the movies is that in the comic book world of DC, Superman's only really a big deal in the United States. Like, you know, in the movies, everyone across the world is like, save me, Superman, save me, Superman. In the comics, one thing I love that never gets adapted is that actually the rest of the world is like, Martian Manhunter is the coolest person in the world.
Yeah.
And so if you're in Indonesia and you fall over and you're like stuck in a well, you scream out Martian Manhunter, save me. If you're in London and you're about to get, run over, you scream out Martian Manhunter. It's only in the States they're like Superman because the red, white and blue,
Yeah.
And I love that. And I wish they would adapt. I would love to see, even if it's just a one quick scene where he like flies over to Iceland or someone, they're like, who are you? He's just like, I'm Superman. Like, okay, but you're not Martian Manhunter. Like, I love that, and I wish it would be explored more. And I hope maybe James Gunn has like such a weird and deep understanding of the law. I would hope that's the type of thing he'd sneak in.
What I'm really hoping is that, and I know that this is going to sound crazy, but like, I don't care about there being a big slate of new DC movies. I don't care at all. I don't
just
care.
Get the first right.
I don't care if Superman Legacy is so weird that it flops. Like, I would love it if James Gunn took their giant pile of cash and made the most insanely good, weird, alienating Superman film in the world, and then it made no money, because I would still have my Superman film. Right, like, I'm good with. I don't understand why more directors don't do that. Like, I assume it's because they'd reshoot it and ruin it, like they did. Like they did with Fantastic Four and Suicide Squad.
That's us off. We will catch you next time. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff, because we're now in the YouTubes. Patrick will be uploading some of his own solo content soon. I have the Tron video coming out and something very special coming out. Make sure to like us on all the socials and help us build hashtag engagement so we can give you more hashtag content and quit our hashtag day jobs. We'll see you next time. Peace.